Billionaire dad watches Waitress carry and dance with his disabled son. And tomorrow changes her life. EF. Welcome to Tales by Orion. Let's uncover what really happened. The seaside town of Port Blossom was a place where time seemed to slow, its rhythm dictated by the gentle, insistent murmur of the tides. Tourists came and went, a seasonal human tide, but the town's core remained unchanged. A collection of weathered storefronts and families who had known each other for generations. And at the heart of this community was a small bustling cafe called the Salty Spoon, a place that smelled of fried fish, fresh coffee, and something less tangible, a sense of belonging. Moving through the cafe's cheerful chaos with an almost supernatural grace was Maya. To the casual observer, she was a waitress, quick with a smile and uncanny in her ability to remember an order without writing it down. But to those who knew, to the regulars who were the cafe's lifeblood, she was so much more. Maya was a force of nature, a young woman whose spirit was as boundless as the ocean she had grown up beside. She possessed a rare and potent magic, the ability to see the person behind the order, to hear the story behind the silence. Her life was not easy. She was shouldering the weight of her family's debt, a quiet burden she carried with a strength that belied her years. Every tip, every extra shift was a small victory in a long, quiet war. But her struggles had not hardened her. They had polished her, revealing a core of profound empathy and an irrepressible joy for life. That joy found its purest expression in dance. When the cafe was quiet, or when a favorite song came on the old jukebox, she would move, her steps a seamless, unconscious expression of the music in her soul. It wasn't a performance. It was as natural and as necessary as breathing. It was this spirit, this unstudied, radiant life force, that was about to collide with a world of profound silence, a world that was rolling into town in a sleek, black car, with tinted windows, a silent, imposing vessel from another universe, carrying a father and son who had forgotten what joy felt like. The black car, a silent, imposing vessel, glided to a stop outside the Salty Spoon. From its hushed, leather-scented interior, emerged Julian Vance, a man whose tailored suit seemed to repel the town's salty, carefree air. Julian was a titan of finance, a man who lived in a world of stark, unforgiving numbers. His face, handsome and severe, was a mask of controlled, perpetual exhaustion. The past 5 years had been a relentless battle, not in the boardroom, but in the quiet, sterile corridors of hospitals and therapy centers. Beside him, in a state-of-the-art wheelchair, was his son, Leo. Leo was 10 years old, a boy trapped inside a body that had betrayed him. A rare neurological disorder had stolen his ability to walk, to speak, to control his own limbs. He was a prisoner of his own physicality, his bright, intelligent mind locked away behind a veil of silence. His only means of communication were his eyes, large, expressive pools of deep brown that held a universe of frustration, sadness, and a wisdom far beyond his years. Julian's love for his son was a fierce, all-consuming thing, but it was alloyed with a deep, corrosive grief. He saw Leo not as he was, but as a collection of what had been lost. Every doctor's visit, every failed therapy, had chipped away at his hope, leaving behind a grim, joyless determination. He was a father on a mission, but he had forgotten the destination. He was so focused on fixing his son that he had stopped simply being with him. They entered the Salty Spoon, the hushed, clinical silence of their world immediately clashing with the cafe's warm, boisterous energy. Heads turned. The arrival of Julian and Leo was an event, a sudden shift in the town's familiar atmosphere. The locals saw a wealthy man and his disabled son, a tableau of tragedy and privilege. Julian felt their stares, a mixture of pity and curiosity he had long since learned to ignore. He chose a table in the corner, a defensive position, and began the meticulous, joyless process of setting up for Leo's meal, his movements practiced and efficient. He was a man going through the motions, a father tending to a fragile, precious burden, unaware that the universe was about to send him a teacher in the form of a girl with dancing feet and a heart as open as the sea. Maya approached their table, her ever-present smile a beacon of warmth in the cool shadow cast by Julian's demeanor. "Welcome to the Salty Spoon," she said, her voice bright and genuine. "What can I get for you two today?" Julian didn't look up from meticulously arranging Leo's specialized utensils. "He'll have the pureed vegetable soup," he said, his tone flat, dismissive. "And I'll have a black coffee." Maya's smile didn't falter. She didn't look at the father. Her gaze went straight to the son. She crouched down slightly, bringing herself to eye level with Leo, a simple gesture of respect that no one had ever offered him before. Most people either ignored him or spoke about him as if he weren't there. "And what about you, handsome?" she asked. Her voice, "Does soup sound good? Or are you in the mood for something else? We make a mean grilled cheese, and I can cut it into little stars if you want." Julian looked up, startled, an annoyed retort on his lips. "He can't talk," he said curtly, "and he can't eat solid food." "Oh, I know he can't talk with his mouth," Maya replied easily, her eyes still locked on Leo's. "But his eyes are telling me a whole story, and they're saying he's not so sure about the soup." Leo's eyes, which had been dull with a familiar resignation, a flicker of something, surprise, amusement, danced in their depths. He subtly shifted his gaze from Maya to the menu, then back to her. Maya's grin widened. "I see," she said, as if they had just had a long conversation. "A man of discerning taste. Tell you what, I'll bring the soup, but I'll also bring a little side of our mashed potatoes. They're my grandma's secret recipe. So creamy they practically melt in your mouth. Your dad can decide if they're okay. How does that sound?" Leo gave the smallest, almost imperceptible nod, a movement so slight, Julian would have missed it. But Maya saw it. "A deal," she said, winking at him. "Coming right up." She straightened up and walked away, leaving Julian staring after her, a strange mixture of annoyance and bewilderment churning within him. This waitress, this girl, had connected with his son in 2 minutes more than the last 5 therapists combined. She hadn't seen a patient. She hadn't seen a disability. She had seen a person. And that simple, radical act of recognition had sent an unnerving crack through the fortress of Julian's carefully managed world. The meal was a quiet revelation. Maya returned with the soup, the coffee, and a small steaming bowl of mashed potatoes. Julian, on pure instinct, was about to wave the potatoes away, another complication in their rigid routine. But he caught the look in Leo's eyes, a spark of genuine hopeful anticipation he hadn't seen in years. With a sigh of resignation, he took a tiny spoonful of the potatoes, tested the texture, and found them, to his surprise, perfectly soft and smooth. He offered a small bite to Leo. The boy's reaction was immediate. A look of pure, unadulterated pleasure spread across his face, a silent explosion of joy. It was the most expressive he had seen his son be in months. Julian found himself feeding Leo the entire bowl of potatoes, the vegetable soup completely forgot. Throughout the meal, Maya would glide by, not to check on them in the traditional sense, but to share a small conspiratorial glance with Leo. She'd raise an eyebrow in a silent question about the potatoes, and he would respond with a slight widening of his eyes, a silent, "They're amazing." A conversation was happening, a secret, silent dialogue that Julian was a mere observer to. He watched, a spectator to his own son's happiness, and the feeling was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. As the lunch crowd began to thin, a slow, soulful melody drifted from the cafe's old jukebox. It was an old classic, a song full of heartache and hope. Maya, clearing a nearby table, began to move. It wasn't a performance, it was an unconscious swaying, a gentle shifting of her weight, her body a natural, fluid extension of the music. She moved with a liquid grace, a dancer who was not dancing but simply being. Leo watched her, his gaze transfixed. The fork in Julian's hand stilled. He saw his son's eyes follow her every move, and in them he saw a look of profound, wistful longing. It was the look of a prisoner watching a bird in flight. For the first time, Julian wasn't thinking about therapies or treatments. He was seeing, with a clarity that was painful, the boy trapped inside the broken body, a boy who wanted to move, to sway, to dance. And in that moment, he felt a pang of a different kind of grief, not for what his son had lost, but for the joy his son had never even had a chance to know. Maya, finishing her task, caught Leo's intense gaze. She smiled, a soft, understanding smile that seemed to acknowledge the longing she saw there. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked back to their table. Julian tensed, expecting another intrusion, another disruption to his carefully controlled world, but she wasn't looking at him. "He loves the music," she said softly, her eyes on Leo. Julian nodded, unable to speak. "My mom used to say," Maya continued, her voice thoughtful, "that dancing is just your heart finding its feet, that everyone has a dance inside them, even if their body can't keep up." She looked at Leo, a sudden, brilliant idea dawning on her face. It was a crazy, impulsive, beautiful idea, born of pure, unadulterated empathy. "Would you like to dance with me?" she asked him directly. Before Julian could protest, before he could explain the sheer impossibility of the request, Maya had moved. She didn't wait for an answer she knew he couldn't give. She gently unbuckled the straps of Leo's wheelchair, her movements sure and confident. Julian started to rise, a sharp, protective "no" forming on his lips. But he stopped. He stopped because of the look on his son's face. It was a look of pure, terrified, breathtaking hope. Maya carefully, expertly, lifted Leo from his chair. He was a dead weight in her arms, his limbs limp, his head lolling to the side. To anyone else, it would have been an awkward, pitiable sight, but Maya held him, as if he were the most natural dance partner in the world. She held him close, his head resting against her shoulder, and she began to sway, slowly, gently, in the center of the quiet cafe. She hummed along with the jukebox, her voice a low, soothing counterpoint to the music. "There you go," she whispered into his ear, her voice for him alone. "Just feel the music. That's it. We're dancing." Julian Vance sat frozen in his chair, his black coffee growing cold, his billion-dollar empire a million miles away. He watched this stranger, this girl, hold his son, his fragile, broken boy, and give him a gift he had never dared to dream of. He watched her carry his son, not as a burden, but as a partner. She was not just dancing with him, she was dancing for him. She was lending him her strength, her grace, her joy. She was letting his heart find its feet, through. And as Julian watched, the carefully constructed walls around his own heart, walls he had been building for 5 long painful years, began to crumble into dust. The dance was a quiet miracle. It lasted only for the length of the song, maybe 3 minutes, but in that small pocket of time, the universe of the Salty Spoon was fundamentally altered. A few of the remaining regulars, the old fishermen and the town gossips, watched in stunned, reverent silence. They saw not a waitress and a disabled boy, but something ancient and sacred, an act of pure, unadulterated kindness that transcended the ordinary. Maya moved with a gentle, fluid grace, her body a vessel for the music, and for the silent boy in her arm. She swayed and turned, her movements slow and deliberate, supporting Leo's weight with a strength that seemed impossible for her slender frame. And Leo was transformed. His body was still limp, but his face, resting against her shoulder, was a study in pure, unalloyed bliss. A small genuine smile touched his lips, the first real smile Julian had seen in years. His eyes were closed, and for a few precious minutes, he was not a prisoner in a wheelchair. He was a boy. He was a boy dancing. As the last notes of the song faded into the gentle hum of the cafe, Maya slowly, carefully, placed Leo back in his chair, buckling the straps with the same gentle precision she had used to unbuckle them. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "You're a wonderful dancer," she whispered to him. Then she turned to Julian. His face was a wreck, his carefully maintained composure completely gone. His eyes were red, and a single silent tear was tracing a path down his cheek, a traitor to his lifetime of emotional control. He didn't bother to wipe it away. He looked at Maya, this girl, this impossible, radiant force of nature, and he was utterly, completely speechless. He opened his mouth to say thank you, to say something, anything, but no words came. The language of his world of contracts, and numbers, and bottom lines was useless here. He had just witnessed a transaction of the soul, and he had no currency with which to repay it. Maya, seeing his distress, simply smiled, a kind, gentle smile that asked for nothing. "It was my pleasure," she said softly, and with that, she went back to clearing tables, leaving Julian alone with the ghost of the music and the profound, world-altering truth of what he had just seen. The drive back to their rented beach house was silent, but it was a different kind of silence than the one they had arrived with. It was no longer the sterile, empty silence of resignation. It was a silence full of thought, of emotion, of the memory of a dance. Julian kept glancing at his son in the rearview mirror. Leo's face was still alight with a kind of afterglow, a quiet, peaceful joy that seemed to radiate from him. The ghost of his smile remained. That night, for the first time in a long time, Julian didn't pore over medical journals or research new experimental therapies. He simply sat with his son, the two of them looking out at the dark, restless ocean. He thought about Maya. He thought about her effortless empathy, her simple, profound act of seeing his son as a whole person. He thought about her words. Everyone has a dance inside them. He had spent 5 years trying to fix his son's body, focusing on everything that was broken. He had never once thought about his son's heart. He had never thought about his joy. The realization was a devastating blow, a paternal failure of catastrophic proportions. But it was also a liberation. It was the key, the answer he had been searching for in all the wrong places. The next day, he went back to the Salty Spoon. He went alone. Maya was surprised to see him. "Did you forget something?" she asked. Her smile as bright as ever. "Yes," Julian said, his voice quiet but firm. "I think I forgot how to be a father." He told her about their life, about the endless parade of doctors and therapists, about his relentless, joyless quest for a cure. He spoke with a raw, painful honesty he hadn't used with anyone before. Maya listened, her expression full of a deep, quiet compassion. "You love him," she said simply, when he had finished. "That's not something you can forget." "But I forgot his happiness," Julian countered, his voice thick with regret. "You gave that back to him, to us. How can I possibly repay you for that?" Maya shook her head. "You don't have to repay me." Seeing him smile, that was the payment, but Julian was insistent. He was a man of action, a man who solved problems. "You have a gift, Maya, a way of connecting with people, and you're dancing. It's not just a hobby, is." Maya looked away, a flicker of something, a long-buried dream, in her eyes. "It was my life once," she admitted. "I was accepted to a conservatory in the city. But life happened. My family needed me." She said it without self-pity, as a simple statement of fact. And in that moment, Julian saw the whole picture. He saw her sacrifice, her strength, her buried talent, and he saw a way forward, not just for her, but for him and for Lee. Julian Vance was a man who moved mountains when he was motivated, and for the first time in years, he was motivated by something other than grief. He returned to the city and unleashed the full force of his considerable resources, not on a corporate takeover, but on a project of the heart. He found the best dance movement therapist in the country, a woman who specialized in working with children with profound physical disabilities. He located a small, beautiful dance studio that was about to go out of business, and bought it outright. He hired architects to make it fully accessible, with ramps and hoists, and a specially designed sprung floor. A few weeks later, he went back to Port Blossom. He found Maya on her lunch break, sitting on the pier, staring out at the ocean. He didn't offer her a check. He offered her a key. "I can't give you back the years you lost," he said, placing the key in her hand. "But I can give you a place to dance, and I can give you a purpose." He explained his plan. The studio would be her own. She would run it. She would complete her conservatory training, with a full scholarship funded by him. The debts that had shackled her family would be paid, and she would work with the therapist to develop a new kind of program, one based on her own intuitive, empathetic approach. It would be a place for children like Leo, a place where they could feel the joy of movement, a place where their hearts could learn to dance, even if their bodies couldn't. "I'm not offering you a job, Maya," he said. "I'm offering you a partnership. I want you to teach me, and others, what you know. I want you to teach us how to see the person, not the disability." Maya stared at the key in her hand, her eyes filling with tears. It was an impossible, audacious, life-altering offer. It was the resurrection of a dream she had long since buried. She looked at this man, this severe, powerful man, who had been so completely transformed by a single act of kindness, and she knew her answer. She was a dancer, and her heart was telling her to leap. The Leo's Leap Dance Studio became a beacon of hope, a place of quiet, joyful miracle. The walls, painted a warm, sunny yellow, were soon covered with the handprints of its students. The air, once silent, was now filled with music, with laughter, and with the soft whir of wheelchairs moving across the sprung floor. Maya, under the guidance of the therapist, flourished. She discovered she had a profound, innate talent for this new kind of dance, a dance of connection, of empathy, of shared movement. She developed techniques that were revolutionary, using slings and scarves and her own body to help children experience the sensation of a leap, the freedom of a spin. And at the center of it all was Leo. He was the studio's first and most dedicated student. In Maya's arms, he learned to feel the rhythm, to trust the movement, to let go. His smile, once a rare and precious commodity, became a constant presence. He couldn't speak, but he learned to communicate with a flick of his wrist, a turn of his head, a language of joy that everyone at the studio learned to understand. Julian became a fixture at the studio. He shed his tailored suits for comfortable sweaters, his stern demeanor for an easy, genuine smile. He learned to see his son not as a project to be fixed, but as a person to be cherished. He learned to find joy not in a future cure but in the present moment, in the shared smile after a successful dance. He became a father again, in the truest sense of the word. The studio's reputation grew, and soon, families from all over the country were coming to Port Blossom, drawn by the stories of the magical place where children who couldn't walk learned to fly. The town itself was transformed, its quiet streets now filled with the determined, hopeful energy of these new families. The Salty Spoon had to hire 3 new waitresses to handle the influx of customers. Julian, seeing the impact, established a foundation to provide housing and financial support for the families who came seeking the studio's magic. A single dance had started a ripple effect, a wave of hope and healing that was changing an entire community. This story is about the transformative power of a single, simple act. It is about a dance in a rundown seaside cafe that did more than just fill 3 minutes of music. It mended a broken father, it freed a captive boy, and it resurrected a forgotten dream. It reminds us that the most profound connections are often forged in the most unexpected of places, and that the greatest gifts we can give are not things that can be bought, but things that must be shared. Kindness, empathy, and a little piece of our own joy. Maya saw a person where the rest of the world saw a disability. She heard a desire where others heard only silence. In a world that is so often quick to judge, to label, and to look away, she chose to look closer. She chose to connect. Julian, a man trapped in his own grief, had forgotten that love is not just about protection and provision. It is about participation. It is about sharing in another's world and finding the joy that exists right now, in this moment, not in some far-off hoped-for future. His journey is a testament to the idea that it is never too late to learn a new way to love. And what of Leo? His story teaches us that a body may be a prison, but a spirit can never be truly confined. Within every person, regardless of their physical limitations, there is a heart that yearns to dance. It is up to us, to the ones who are able, to lend them our feet, to share our rhythm, and to help them feel the music. Let us all strive to be a little more like Maya. Let us look for the silent conversations happening all around us. Let us have the courage to reach out, to offer a hand, to share a dance, for we never know whose life we might change, and in doing so, how profoundly we might change our own.